superstars in the field of research and innovations.
This call is now being recorded.
I am gleeful to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Madheshwaran. He completed his MSc in Physics at Sri Ramakrishna Mission Vidyalaya and he was a Proficiency Award holder. Dr. Madheshwaran completed his PhD at Kongunadu Arts and Science College and received Best Research Scholar Award while pursuing PhD. He is having 8 years of teaching experience and 12 years of research experience. His area of specialization is thin film technology and material processing. He has produced one MPhil and one PhD scholar and currently guiding one MPhil scholar. Dr. Madheshwaran is the principal investigator of one major and one minor project sanctioned by IUAC New Delhi. He has delivered 2 invited lectures in conferences and organized many workshops and seminars. Dr. Madheshwaran published his research work in reputed national and international journals. He is a life member in ISCA and IARA. With this introduction, I welcome you all to today's webinar session on the perspectives in material modification. Now, I hand over the session to Dr. Madheshwaran. Sir, please, and I will be happy to be today.
Thank you, madam, for your nice words.
Good afternoon, one and all present here, and thank you for your warm welcome. I express my sincere thanks to our Honorable President of our college, Dr. M. Archami sir, and most respected Secretary and Director of our college, Dr. C.A. Vasugi ma'am, and respected Principal, Dr. M. Lakshman Swami sir, and the team members of organizing committee to given me the opportunity to be a part of this series of webinar. Today, I am going to explain the perspectives in material modification. Again, I'm going to start with thin film technology. Actually, the thin film technology is one of the thrust area in material science. It deals with the materials at different dimensions. That's two-dimensional thin layer over a support, or it may be like a substrate. These are the three major steps involved in thin film technology. One has to concentrate on that, the preparation of a material, and then a characterization. At last, it may end up with a device application. Then we are going to look at the step 1, the preparation technique. Actually, the people, those who are working in thin film technology, should be have the fundamental idea about the periodic table or the elements belongs to which group, and either it may be a compound. Actually, these elements or compounds should possess some physical and chemical characteristics, like it may be like a metal, semi-metal, or insulator, or it may be rare earth metals. That depends on the physical and chemical properties. One can categorize the material into a melting point based on the melting point and the oxidation state, electronegativity, and atomic radii. These 4 parameters are very crucial parameters while they are chosen the material for the device application. Once they have chosen a certain material, either an element or compound, the second one, the deposition technique, they have to acquire it. Either they can choose the top-down method or a bottom approach method. In top-down method, the number of materials were limited, and when we are going for the physical evaporation method, it's commonly used for thin film preparation technique, especially thermal evaporation. And again, it can further classify it into different methodology like a vacuum thermal evaporation, flash evaporation, and co-evaporation, sequential thermal evaporation, by the evaporation by using an electron gun, and DC on oversputtering. This all the methods are actually worked out in a particular evacuated atmosphere. That's called vacuum. And in chemical methods, there are a number of methods for able to prepare a thin films, like chemical bath deposition and Szilard method, successive ionic layer adsorption reaction method, the dip coating method, spin coating method, and chemical vapor deposition, at last ALD, and even much more, the atomic layer deposition, and much more. Then there may be intermediate step called the post-deposition process. Once a material has been prepared as an as-grown film, then we want to expect that the as-grown film itself may sufficient to prepare the devices. Then we can go for certain post-deposition process in order to modify the actual property of a material to suit it better for a practical applications. The first used thing is a commonly called as a conventional thermal annealing method. It's a low-cost technique also. This can be carried out in a vacuum atmosphere or in different gas ambient also to make it suit it better for a device application. Then second thing, the rapid thermal annealing method and even plasma exposure also. Then chemical etching method and laser ablation. These two techniques belongs to chemical methods, and gamma irradiation method and electron beam irradiation method. And at last, I am going to highlight with the ion beam irradiation technique to modify the material property as a post-deposition process. Even then, in an ion beam irradiation process, again, it can be broadly classified into low energy ion beam irradiation or implantation and high energy ion beam irradiation. Or we can say that that's called shift heavy ion irradiation or SHI irradiation. And as I said earlier in step 2, the post-deposition process, while I have chosen this conventional thermal annealing method to tune the property of a material, what are the difficulties one can face it? The first thing, by using thermal evaporation techniques, if I have prepared a material, the deposition parameters in a thermal evaporation technique called source to substrate temperature and the partial pressure involved in the preparation technique and compound decomposition and re-evaporation from the substrate and also the effect of substrate. These parameters plays a crucial role deciding the material properties. So that it's very difficult to control also by using the conventional method of preparation. And it's very, very complicated to achieve the monophased or single crystalline thin films. But yet it results with a different stoichiometry. For example, if the material possesses a certain amount of a chalcogenide, then one can expect that there may be excess in chalcogenide after preparation of a sample, or there may be a possible chance of a deficiency or lagging of chalcogenide in the material, and re-evaporation of a material from the surface of a sample. And further, the difficulty faced in high temperature processing, while he chosen this kind of a chalcogenide material, if you process further at a higher temperature to prepare a single phased sample, then it creates a tellurium or selenium vacancy on the surface due to very, very small electronegativity difference between the involving metal and chalcogenide. For example, I have chosen an indium metal as a low melting point material as a choice of one. So indium and tellurium making the electronegativity difference of only 0.32 Pauling. And second cases, in case of indium selenide, it's only having 0.77 Pauling. Actually, this very small electronegativity end up with a different polymorphism in a sample. At second part, at ambient temperature, the excess of chalcogenide is present in the sample, which promotes the formation of a thin layer of a chalcogenide oxides. Instead of forming this metal chalcogenide sample, we may expect that the chalcogenide oxide over the surface of a sample like a tellurium oxide or selenium oxide. And what are the difficulties in diffusion synthesis method, even though going for the conventional process? Actually, the dopant is placed over semiconductor material or a particular selected material, and subsequent annealing causes the diffusion of a dopant. And the limitations of a diffusion synthesis are actually the dopant concentration is very, very limited. Suppose you have chosen the conventional technique, only the dopant concentration is allowed to a profile of a few nanometers or only few Armstrongs itself. And the dopant depth cannot be controlled very, very easily. So this depth may actually follow the Gaussian distribution and the poor spatial selectivity also. Suppose if you want to dope a particular material inside a metal or a sample, then we cannot able to control the particular space itself. That's called poor selectivity. And the dopant spreads all over the substrate, and it cannot be concentrated at a expected or the particular point. So we have certain remedies also for this conventional method. That's the ion beam technique. Thus, we can go for doping of impurity at a particular depth level. And for example, the cadmium sulfide, cadmium telluride, and zinc telluride, zinc selenide, and so on. Then the modification of inherent properties of a material itself And the bilayer mixing in case of a Fe is a ferrosilicate sample, indium selenide and indium telluride, and the formation of self-organized nanostructures. And the instrumentation which we have used for ion beam techniques are the accelerator technique, especially the particle accelerator or a linear accelerator called a Pelletron accelerator. Then what are the merits of that particular Pelletron accelerator? Is the energy of the ion makes a very depth controlled very easily. Then the concentration of the dopant can be varied, and the diffusion is controlled, and the spatial selectivity is also improved as expected to be, and it's also called the room temperature process. And the signification of this particular accelerators are the ion current was very much larger, that 10 power 11 ions per centimeter squared per second can be dropped over there. Then the energy can be varied with respect to mass of the target nuclei and also charge state of the target nuclei. And actually what it represents the shift heavy ion. If an energy of an ion is accelerated, then the accelerator energy of the ion should be greater than 1 mega electron volt. That's the boundary condition that we fixed to call it as a shift heavy ion. Then the accelerated energy of an ion or the velocity should be greater than that of a Bohr velocity of an electron. If passage of ion through material causes excitation or even an ionization of metals, it may not be like a simple atomic displacement. So it may be a vertex state of a different kind of a phenomena. And the time of ionization or excitation takes place in less than a femtoseconds of time period. Okay. Then the phenomena of ion solid interaction that I am going to explain a little bit. Actually, an energetic ion interact with a solid material, then what will happen? Actually, it loses its kinetic energy in two ways, that by nuclear energy loss and also electronic energy loss. Again, this interaction also depends on the energy of the projectile ion and mass of the ion and also the target lattice. So this high energy heavy ions with the velocity higher than the velocity of an orbital atom gives the electronic energy loss. Especially it may end up with an inelastic collision. By using this inelastic collision, then the atomic excitation or even ionization can also be possible inside a material, inside or along the trajectory of the material. Especially if the trajectory is completely ionized and if it is exploded, then it may be called as a columnar defect. Actually, this electronic energy loss is very, very dominant at an energy level of mega electron volt. But instead, if I choose on the lower energy level in terms of kilo electron volt, this elastic collisions were possible. So one can expect that the nuclear energy loss may be possible in case of a kilo electron volt range. So usually it produces a little bit atomic displacement or even a certain Frankel defects also. That's called point defect, like a vacancy and displacement of an ion or interchangeable position of an atoms and molecules present in a sample. So this phenomena is usually dominant at a low energy level. Then this picture clearly indicates the difference between the shifty heavy ion or the impact of a shifty heavy ion when compared with the nuclear energy loss or kilo electron volts. The up to 1 mega electron volt, actually this nuclear energy loss is dominant inside the sample, and after that actually this electronic energy losses were dominant when compared with the nuclear energy loss. So if an energetic particle imping on a material, and if it is penetrated the surface of a solid, it may trigger a number of processes. For example, the instant energy ion may rest up inside a material, it's called as implantation, and it may eject the atomic materials present on the surface of a sample, that's called sputtering, and certain nuclear reactions also possible. In some cases, the photons may be ejected due to the impartment of kinetic energy to the lattice material, and the lattice, ultimately we can expect the lattice disorder inside a material, that's called structural transformation. That may be, there may be a recrystallization or an amorphization of material. Then further we can categorize into different steps, then how it can be possible to achieve the recrystallization or fast transformation by using this ion solid interaction. In a step 1, if an instant energy is deposited over a surface of a sample, a very strong electromagnetic or electronic excitations in a nanometer level of a zone Actually, it may create the initial part of a melting zone. In a step 2, further it may be irradiated. Then the electron-phonon coupling usually takes place. Due to the electron-phonon coupling, the energy transferred through the trajectory of a trajectory or the path of a material can be transferred over the rest of the zone of material, and it can causes the transient melting and atomic relocations also possible. And at last, the formation of a latent tracks. Latent tracks nothing but the amorphous region inside the material. And during this amorphization, there may be possible chance of phase transformation and reutilization. Obviously, the number of models were utilized to explain the phenomena happens inside the material. The first one is the Coulombic explosion and thermal spike. These two are very dominant while explaining these material properties, and lateral mass transport and viscoelastic materials also the secondary phenomenon which supports the explanation of this material. And the first one, Coulombic explosion model. Actually, this Coulombic charge explosion, it may be like an ionization, repulsion of an ionized atoms at a critical level along its ion path. Then it may be preferred inside an insulator. So there is no free electrons to neutralize the repulsive forces inside the insulator. So this Coulombic deposition may be exploded at a certain stage. So it may becomes the formation of a positive ion core along the ion path and a higher electrostatic repulsion after a certain period of time between the excited atoms. Then the explosion due to electrostatic repulsion. Finally, the erosion of material or even the modification of materials will happen. And these two diagram clearly indicates that how the temperature profile occur inside a material while we radiate with swift heavy ions. Actually, this solid state medium may be composed of two different ones. The first one is electron gas and an atomic lattice. So the transfer of energy may taken place through electron-phonon interaction or an electron-electron interaction also. This solids to liquid phase transformation occurs, and the rapid thermal quenching because of a nanometer region of irradiation one, which results in the information of amorphous tracks and modification of a material property. Actually, this animation clearly indicates that how the temperature profile occurs inside a material in case of a nanometer range. And in the second methodology to explain this irradiation phenomena of a thermal spike, actually the energy transfer may be happen through electron-electron interaction and also electron-phonon interaction. And the viscoelastic model, actually this particular model is very helpful to explain the stress-strain relationship inside a material. Actually, in the thermal spike region embedded into an elastic environment, the initial forces are only imparted in the emission of an elastic wave packets at the beginning of the thermal spike. A crucial point in the present context is the proper choice of a stress-strain relationship and superposition laws of the different types of field contributions. And other technique involving ion beam processing is called ion beam mixing. Simply, we may call it as an IBM process. This IBM also achieved by using low energy ion beam mixing and high energy ion beam induced mixing. In low energy ion beam mixing, the recoil implantation also possible, nothing but the dopant or the doping profile. Then the second one, the radiation enhanced diffusion and thermal spike diffusion also possible. And with respect to swift heavy and induced mixing, it may also support the Coulombic explosion model and a special model in insulators and thermal spikes model in metals and semiconductors. And this can be used for the immiscible systems also to make it a miscible one. Then the ion beam mixing process. Actually, the figure A indicates that the bilayer samples, actually the B may be taken as a support medium or a substrate, and A may be a deposited one. If the sample is subjected to ion beam irradiation, actually it was represented in the bigger free or intermediate state. The incoming ions may be, the energy of the incoming ions may be transferred to the lattice points, Actually, that's get mixed, or the little bit mixed layers will happen at the result. But at the end of irradiation, we may expect that certain amount of the layer were unmixed in part A and part B, and the ion mixed region or vertex region also possible after the end of irradiation. Especially this is in case of a low energy ion beam mixing. As I said, the first diagram clearly represents the vertex state of an sample. I have chosen indium and tellurium bilayer sample, over which it was irradiated with the help of a 80 MeV oxygen ion. And at the end of the process, I got only the intermediate state of IN2Ta3 or indium telluride sample. But at adjacent sites, there may be a little trace amount of indium layer and tellurium layer. While I am moving for a swift heavy ion irradiation by using gold ion and silver ion of 150 MeV, it can result that the complete mixing of indium and tellurium layer to form indium telluride sample. Actually, this process takes that the temperature of a 3000 degrees centigrade was generated while you deposit the swift heavy ions of 150 MeV gold ion inside a material. Then the thermal spikes were generated up within the time period of a 10 power minus 13 seconds. After that, due to electron phonon coupling, the created temperature profile may be relaxed throughout the sample within the time period of a 10 power minus 10 seconds. Or we can say that within a few milliseconds of time period, the temperature profile gets reduced, and finally we may get up with the interdiffusion. Then it's a crucial factor, one of the crucial factors in bilayer mixing called vertex effect. Vertex effect nothing but if I have prepared a bilayer samples of or combination of a metal and insulator. Actually, this red circles indicates the insulator layer and the blue one indicates the metal ion. At the end of this ion beam mixing process, a certain part of the insulator layers gets amorphized, and it can replace this atom or atomic displacement region. And at the second zone or in a vertex zone, the mixed zones of insulator and the metal part also possible. So which will be helpful to fabricate that the metallization of an integrated chips. While you taken this electrical contact from a N-type or P-type semiconductor material to act as a diode or transistor, this method will be very, very helpful to metallize the sample. And then the columnar defect. In a columnar defect, I already said that there may be a recrystallization inside the trajectory of a material. During this recrystallization, while you have chosen the particular amount of or the threshold amount of energy, like a 80 MeV to 100 MeV of oxygen and argon ion, then the tracks or dimensions may be differ. Actually, the track dimension depends on the amount of instant energy and the rate of energy deposited, nothing but the fluence, ion fluence. Then the constant rate of energy supplies over a longer period of time, which yields a track of good aspect ratio or length to width ratio. The degree of disorder can vary from a very point defects to a continuous amorphous zone. Here we can see that the raw dark image in a graph indicates that the columnar defects of a large aspect ratio, where we can expect the perfect crystallization of a material. Then how it happens inside a ion track? Then yes, actually the HI produces cylindrical damage zone along their trajectory in polymers. The electronic excitation of constituent atoms causes breaking of bonds associated with the hydrogen in a polymer material. The free hydrogen atom combine together to form a hydrogen molecule and having high diffusivity and escape from the polymer chain and causing a reduction in a hydrogen content. At higher fluence, when the track diameter starts overlapping, the loss of hydrogen is decreased. Hence, the rate of loss of hydrogen becomes constant at that particular fluence. This fluence also used to estimate the track radius. and how we are going to utilize this columnar trap. In especially the production of nanopores by chemical etching of ion tracks has turned over in industry. This actually the nanopores used in electronic circuits. The attention paid to the effect of shift heavy ion on organic materials also raising. Actually, this basic idea is to interrupt the conducting tracks by inserting certain insulation layers like a silica oxide, and which are not converted into conducting layer, and then conducting individual tracks made by AFM tips. And for sensitive voltage detection, the energy applied should be exceeded a certain limit, and the size of the structure should be in case of approximately 10 nanometer. This is a few examples for bilayer mixing cases. The first diagram clearly indicates that the bilayer of a PT and TI, and second and third one represents the bilayer of a PT and aluminum. Actually, the cross-sectional view of a TI PT system, after 7 kilo electron volt of energy deposited over the sample until 30 picoseconds, we may expect only little bit interface mixing possible. Again, further it was irradiated, the next system was irradiated with the help of a 6 kilo electron volt argon ion bombardment, but the time of exposure gets increased from 30 picoseconds to 25 picoseconds actually. Then at last the diagram, the cross-sectional view of an aluminum PT layer after 6 keV electron volt irradiation and 55 picoseconds of ion impact. The thickness of the cross-sectional slabs are 10 Armstrong in all the cases. Actually, this ion beam technique is not only helpful to fabricate the ion tracks and the modification, amorphization of material, it also helpful to fabricate the nanoparticles or the decoration of nanoparticles over different types of a substrate. Actually, this work was published in 2011 by Jayaprakash et al. He actually synthesized golden nanoparticles at the surface of an carbonaceous PAT matrix by irradiating 150 kilo electron volt of ion irradiation. Actually, when the PET pristine sample is subjected to ion beam irradiation, especially this argon ion irradiation, the PO and PET pristine sample initially, the pristine sample shows that the uniform morphology through the same analysis, and the second one clearly indicates that there is a possible chance of a bright spot over the irradiated one. Then we can clearly identify that what is the bright spot after irradiation. That actually this bright parts represent the in elemental composition there may be a greater amount of a AU when compared with the dark spot of AU. So clearly indicates the formation of a different size nanoparticles or gold nanoparticles that was decorated over a PET substrate. Actually, the phenomenon of nanoparticle formation, actually it has been observed in ion beam irradiation of metal polymer bilayer system, which results in chemical modification at the interface forming chemical compound, which results in improved adhesion between the metal and polymer substrate. And he also reported that the control of the surface microstructure by controlling ion flow is possible, and understanding the phenomena of ion-induced surface nanostructuring and synthesis of metal polymer nanocomposites. And from an application point of view, the synthesis of nanomaterials by ion beam is an expensive process. But on the other hand, the production of nanostructure at the surface and embedded in the matrix up to the desired path as well as with high concentration is not possible by other conventional means. The most important difference between the application of high and low energy regime is that low energy ion beams can be easily available for industrial purpose and is rather less expensive process as compared with the high energy ion beams. Due to availability of ion implanters for industrial purpose, the studies using low energy ion irradiation to thin film interface are significantly important. Then the craters were formed as a result of a sputtered out flow of AU atoms from the hot molten zone of a cascade. The argon ion induced sputtering of AU film and the strong tendency of noble metals to aggregate on a polymer because of their high cohesive force helps in dividing of an AU film. It's a very peculiar and also new phenomena called dividing. That particular dividing leads to a discontinuous gold films as shown in the AFM micrographs. Then moreover, the weak interaction of noble metal to polymer and strong intensity of metal to minimize the surface energy due to the formation of a gold nanoparticle at the surface. Along with all the process, subsequent diffusions of gold atoms also possible through that FET layer, a PET layer, through the disordered molecular structure of a polymers containing the free radicals, H2 gas, etc., and leading to interface mixing, then which results in the formation of a thin nanocomposite layer. The ion beam induced mixing and the surface structure for the metal polymer bilayer system is a new one. And what was that? The peculiar phenomena that's called divoting. Again, our group also studied the phenomena of divoting by using this indium telluride sample, which is subjected to a 130 MeV gold ion irradiation. Especially this is very helpful to fabricate the carbon dioxide gas sensing. The first same diagram clearly indicates that the pristine sample A, which contains the surface layer like indium layer deposited over a tellurium sample, and if it is subjected to lower ion radiation, like 1 into 10 to the power of 12 ions per centimeter squared in a particular period of a time, again it melts the surface layer. And the second diagram clearly indicates the formation of a cracks inside the sample and also the surface of a sample. And the diagram D clearly indicates that the large amount of voids present over the sample, and at last E, it's a final stage of a divoting over the sample. And the second graphical diagram indicates that the RBS or the Rutherford backscattering spectra of the irradiated sample. The first black one indicates that two different peaks, especially in the region of channels from 1300 to 1700, indicate the bilayer nature of a sample. But after irradiation with the help of 3 into 10 power of 13 ions per centimeter square, the violet line indicates the formation of a single compound. So clearly we can confirm that after irradiation there is no individual layer system. It gets mixed to get a bilayer system. So we can say that the system is a very miscible one. But in case of a conventional method, it's not at all possible to achieve a miscible system, especially in case of an indium and tellurium sample. And the same sample was tested over a carbon dioxide. Actually, the high ion fluence irradiated sample shows a higher amount of a sensitivity than with compared with of a pristine sample, and also the lesser amount of fluences. The reason began that, especially for sensing application, the surface and interface interactions between the test molecules and the sensing materials also important. Actually, this diagram indicates that the initial stages of a divoting, it was irradiated by 1 into 10 power of 12 or 3 into 10 power of 12 ions per centimeter squared. Actually, the black dot indicates that there may be a deficiency of a tellurium, and the indium layer is, or the percentage of indium may be greater when compared with the tellurium. But the white spot indicates that the tellurium is very greater than compared with the indium. So actually the white part indicates that the tellurium may be higher atomic number when compared with the indium. Then when the interface energy of a metal nanoparticle, especially the indium layer, and the structure is and the substrate is very smaller than the surface energy of the metal in an ambient condition, this nanoparticle is thermodynamically unstable. So if the metal atoms get enough mobility, then the nanostructure can get buried in the substrate in order to minimize the free energy. So ion irradiation gradually enhances the atomic mobility within the nanostructure. But here I have given a microstructure. But even in case of microstructure also, the divoting phenomena will happen. It's this picture indicates the intermediate stages of divoting, where we can observe the large amount of cracks or holes present inside the material. Again, the noble metals or nanoparticle synthesis on the substrate or embedded in the substrate have been the subject to great interest in recent nanobiotechnology research for a variety of optical and spectroscopic and sensing applications. The noble metal nanoparticles such as AU and AG have been extensively studied in various aspects of fundamentals and in applied research. This same image clearly indicates the final stage of a divoting or in a perfect divoting nature. Actually, this was subjected to 3 into 10 power 13 or extreme ions per centimeter square. Actually, we can say that the superposition of the three different parameters, the high degree of crystallinity after the uh, after the impact of a higher doses, and the larger area surface, nothing but the higher porosity of the sample due to divetting and loss of thickness of a certain amount of a material gets ejected from the surface of a material, also helpful to fabricate the gas sensor. And similar work was already reported, and the scientists also studied the divetting and nano pattern formation of a thin film PT films on SiO2 induced ion beam irradiation. Actually, these metallic films tends to divide from a non-reactive substance, and due to the high energies of metal surface and interfaces, then the divetting of metallic films is an important topic for both technological and scientific considerations. Then compared to thermal tunneling or laser irradiation, an ion beam irradiation provides a fundamentally different types of heating than where the ion deposits the energy highly localized path in space, especially in nanometers, and in time within a picoseconds. The formation of holes and craters induced by thermal spike have been predicted and indeed observed in thin freestanding metallic films. Then the local melting at the surface can lead to dramatic changes in the thin film morphology, since large gradient in temperature leads to gradient in the surface retention and local pressure, and this drives a mass flow. The craters or even holes can then form as a result of atomic displacement in the region of a track of ions. So this ion-induced formation of craters and holes have been observed by in situ transmission electron microscopy observation of thin metallic foils. Then what kind of instruments were utilized to have such kind of experiments? It's called the 15 UD pelletron accelerator. It's a schematic diagram of the particular pelletron accelerator, where we can have a number of choice of ions as a positive ion. Initially, they are going to create the negative ions at the interchangeable ion sources. Then it may be injected over a particular column. This acceleration due to Coulombic, actually this was accelerated due to Coulombic attraction. This again, the stripping of electrons produces a positive ion at an intermediate state, and then acceleration due to Coulombic repulsion was possible. By using a mass analyzer or the Faraday cup, we can select the particular ion energy. This is the inside view of a pelletron accelerator 15 UD, and it's a versatile one. It's a heavy ion tandem type of electrostatic accelerator. In this machine, the negative ions are initially produced and pre-accelerated to 300 kiloelectron volt, a very much minimum amount of energy in an ion source, and is injected into a strong electric field inside an accelerator tank filled with SF6 insulating gas. At the center of the tank is the terminal shell, which is maintained at a very high voltages, 15 megavolt, and these negative ions on traversing through the accelerating tubes from the column top of the tank to the positive terminal gets accelerated. On reaching the terminal, they pass through the stripper, which removes some electrons from the negative ions and thus transforming the negative ions into positive ions. And it's an actual pictorial view of a material science division at the Inter-University Accelerator, New Delhi, where I have carried out this kind of experiments. Actually, this tandem Van de Graaff accelerator drives beams of higher energy than the ordinary type single stack cracked Walton accelerator with precisely and very defined energy. Here we can see that the material science beamline available at Inter-University Accelerator, New Delhi. Actually, in a ladder, we can place the samples, for example, at the right side of a figure clearly indicates how the ladder looks like that. In a hollow cylinder, we can fill up with the liquid nitrogen. By using a quartz, we can identify where the ion beam irradiation paths goes inside the material, and almost 4 samples when we can fix at the single phase of a layer, then we can have 4 phases at a time. We can irradiate the 16 samples or one by one, and the sample dimensions will be restricted into 1 into 1 centimeter. Actually, this is the control room available at Inter University Accelerator, New Delhi, where we can select the parameters like the experiment should be carried out in a very ultra high vacuum chamber 10 power minus 10 millibar, and we can choose the choice of ions based on their mass and the oxidation state of the uh, ion and ion energy either by kilo electron volt or mega electron volt we can accelerate, and by ion current also we can achieve for example 0.5 PNA per second or 1 PNA or 2 PNA. PNA is nothing but the particle nanoampere. At the maximum of 2 particle nanoampere we can fix it for a stable ion. The ion fluence can be varied for a safety ions from 1 in 10 power 12 ions per centimeter square to 5 in 10 power 13 ions per centimeter square. And also I wish to acknowledge the Pelletron group associated with our research team at IUS in New Delhi. Dr. K. Asokan sir, scientist G. He is the actual driving force behind this research work. And the Dr. Chandeep Chopra, scientist H, and Dr. Ambuj Tripathi, scientist G, and Dr. Shunil Oja, scientist G, and Mr. Vijay Patel, engineer in Pelletron Group. I express a sincere thanks to all the people, those who have collaborated with me to make it a success. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you, sir, for your wonderful presentation. Now the participants can post their questions. Sir, first question.
Yes.
In order to increase the crystallinity in the alloy layer system during the ion beam mixing process, what are all the parameters are taken to consider to increase the deposited system crystallinity, or else by increasing the intensity of ion dosage is sufficient?
So thank you for posting this particular question. Actually, in order to increase the crystallinity, we use this the SRIM software, nothing but the stopping and ranging in ions and meters. By using this particular software, we can predict that up to which the irradiated samples may be the ion beam mixing will happen. So by using this particular software, we can identify the thickness of the sample. Then what amount of thickness may be possible to have a complete mixing or the interface mixing. Actually, the ion energy and the dosage, these two parameters will play a great role when deciding the crystallinity of a material.
Okay, sir. Next question. What are all the properties to be checked when we prepare gold nanoparticle for drug delivery?
Sir, in case of a biological application, actually, in a material science, we people are using a substrate over which a number of layers are deposited. But one has to check it that whether the low ion beam implanter will be helpful to fabricate the coastal nanostructures, but over a substrate or in support. That we have to check it later.
Any other questions? Okay, sir. Next question posted by Dr. M. Dhanam Madam. Which materials can be irradiated and which cannot be irradiated? Role of this technique in the device efficiency.
Actually, very highly hazardous materials cannot be irradiated with the help of these techniques because of ultra high vacuum. The materials gets degassing, so we cannot be able to irradiate such kind of samples. But thermodynamically, Unstable samples also cannot be used in case of this ion beam irradiation. And the role of techniques in the device efficiency. Actually, this ion beam irradiation will play a greater role in defining this efficiency of a sample. Actually, in our cases, the ion beam irradiated samples shows nearly 70% of greater efficiency when compared with the unirradiated sample. So one can utilize this ion beam irradiation techniques beautifully to increase this efficiency of a devices.
No questions in the chat box. Thank you, sir. You are giving a birthday treat to us. In a way, you are presenting very well. Now I invite Dr. B. Gohul, Assistant Professor of Physics, to propose the vote of thanks. Sir, please.
Thank you, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible. You can proceed.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon to all our present here. It's an honor and privilege to propose vote of thanks in this special occasion. First and foremost, I express my deep sense of gratitude to most esteemed president of our college, Dr. M. Aruchami sir, and Honorable Secretary and Director, Dr. C.A. Vasuki madam, for their generous support and providing this excellent platform to learn. I express my sincere thanks to most respected principal, Dr. M. Lakshman sir, for this constant support and encouragement. I also express my sincere thanks to respected Dean and R&D, Dr. S. Balusamy sir, for his tireless support and encouragement. I also express my sincere thanks to respected CEO, Dr. V. Chinnusamy sir, for his encouragement and moral support. I express my sincere thanks to Dr. M. Dhanam, HOD of Physics, for her support. I express my sincere and appreciation to today's resource person, Dr. P. Madheshwaran, for his inspiring lecture on perspectives in material modification. It shows participants would leave this webinar with the new ideas on material processing and modification. I'd like to thank
Gohul, sir.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes. Now, audible. Sir.
I'd like to thank convener Dr. Vijayalakshmi ma'am and coordinator Dr. Vigneshwaran sir and other organizing secretaries Revati Bala madam and Senjil sir for organizing this excellent webinar series. I thank all the participants for active participation and patient listening. Not but not least, I thank all the technical staffs for providing excellent support. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir, for your wonderful words. The participants are requested to join us on tomorrow by 9:45 a.m. for the first session. The first session will be handled by Dr.